Welcome to The Lazy Girl Library, the podcast where reading is a pleasure and captivating adventures happen from the comfort of your couch. I'm your host, Darbi.
And I'm Mikayla.
And if you've ever spent more time rearranging your bookshelf than your priorities, then you, my friend, are in the right place. Hey, welcome to episode 6 of Lazy Girl Library.
We're back and heartbroken and ready to digest.
Yeah, I sounded way too excited and eager during that hello. I'm actually not feeling that way.
This book was just, woo! It was an intense one, and we're so excited to actually get to talk about it now because we've been waiting for this podcast to record all of our thoughts, and I'm so intrigued to hear your thoughts on this, Darbi.
I know. I told Mikayla before we started recording, I was like, I hope I don't cry during the podcast, and I'm not kidding. I was like, when we start talking about things, like,
it's gonna get emotional.
If you hear me sound a little whiny, I'm so sorry. But man, what a good book.
It's going to be a good book talk this time around. This is our book talk episode, so we'll be talking about our book club book of the month, which was The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. So in this episode, we're going to talk about our thoughts on the book as per usual, answer some book club ask questions about the book, and give our final ratings, which it was a great one.
Yeah. And then also we have our new book club book for next month, which is going to be Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So stay tuned at the end of the book for the book description. Warning, book spoilers ahead. Please head to the description and show notes to find where to skip to. You have been warned. Yeah, so to kind of spark notes The Nightingale, it's basically a historical fiction that is set in France during the time of World War II, and it's about a family of two sisters who their mother dies when they're very young. They do not have a great relationship with their father, and they don't even have a good relationship with each other. And as this war starts, you kind of get a dual perspective of both of their lives as they go through the war. And so the older sister, she has a husband who gets deployed. He's forced to go serve in the war. He ends up going into like a work camp or something. Like they keep him in Germany. Like he's not coming back. He's a prisoner of war. Prisoner of war. Thank you. So he's there, and then she has a Nazi who actually stays in the home with her. Billet, I think. How do you
Billet?
Billet?
Something.
Yeah, war terminology. The Nazi lives there with her and her daughter, and so you kind of see her journey of coping through not having her husband there, also having the restrictions. She's much more of a rule follower and trying to just kind of stay under the radar, whereas her younger sister Isabelle has never been like a rule follower, and immediately when the war starts, she's like, I need to help. I need to figure out what I can do. And so, in essence, she makes her way through the war and serving by helping
with the resistance, basically.
Yeah, and a big part of her thing is that she helps soldiers who have fallen out of airplanes. She helps them get back out of France so they can do it again. And
for the Allies.
Yes, for the Allies, yeah. And so then you kind of see her perspective of war through kind of being in the thick of the resistance. But there are so many more details that go into this. You see the family that was not close mend back together. You see the love stories that happen.
You see the character development from like the start of the war, because the book takes you through the start to the end of World War II. So you see the character development and how much these characters change and evolve, and their thought process on everything completely develop as time goes on, and they're experiencing more of these hardships and what they've had to like overcome for it.
There's also a kind of narrator of the present day of one of the sisters and what's kind of happening then, and they're invited to go to France. She lives in America now, and she's invited to go back to France for a like reunion of such, and as like she's being honored there. Sorry.
And you don't know which one it is as you're reading too. You kind of assume that it's one until the very end.
We'll get there. But yeah. It was so good.
All right, so let's get into it, Darbi. What were your initial thoughts for this book?
I can't get into it. I'm going to cry. I don't have a heart anymore because it's been ripped out.
Oh.
essentially. It was seriously so good and moving and powerful, and I don't have enough good things to say about the book. I think it should be read in schools. Like, it was
100%. I totally agree.
Really good, moving, enlightening. I felt so many emotions. It was a really good book, and we've been reading a lot of fantasy fictional books, so this was just such like a, brought back into reality, even though it's still fiction. It's
a different type of adventure, and it's like a breath of fresh air from like the fantasy realm, but still having such a moving and compelling story that really like captivates you and draws you in, but being based on like, no, the story isn't based on true events, but just like true events of like the war and that time that the story is set.
Well, I read like the author's note, like acknowledgments or whatever, and she does say that they were like, she did hear stories of, obviously not these exact stories, but she heard stories from two women that oh,
I'm so glad you read that. I always skip the author's notes and anything extra. I get straight to the meat and potatoes of it.
I might be like saying a couple of things, but I'm pretty sure it was like she heard like two stories about like two women, and I don't think they were sisters, but it kind of like started her, and then through writing the book, and I think since the book has come out, she's heard various other stories.
Wow.
And in doing research, she found so many other stories that like led to addition. So I feel like there is a lot of like realness in it as well. But yeah, my initial thoughts are just wow.
No, same. I mean, I think the book left me such an emotional wreck. Like reading the ending, it really knocked the wind out of me. I've never had that feeling. It was a gasp, an immediate sob.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. 10 out of 10 for me. You couldn't get like any better than what this book. And I love like the ethical and like moral dilemmas that she brings up within the war. Yeah, it's such a complex book that it's really like, I think you can enjoy it if you're just reading at surface level, but if you are a reader like me, it really brings in a lot of these like in-depth like analysis, or like not analysis, but things for you to contemplate while you're reading that don't necessarily have a true defining like answer, right or wrong, yes or no. It's living in this like gray scale of it all that really makes you think about that time period too, and like what those people were going through. Ugh,
yeah, it's so neat.
Good.
I have not heard a single bad thing about this book from anyone that I've talked to that has read it. I've only heard raving reviews, and it makes sense because I am now a raving reviewer.
We can now attest that this is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite part?
Yes, I did have a favorite part. But actually, it's so hard to think of a favorite part because I'm going to say this the whole time. It was also good.
Yeah.
Like, I think some of my favorite parts was just how the family was able to reunite in a sense of, like, healing, like past healing. Because obviously, at the start, none of them were close with each other. And it seemed like they didn't really like each other much.
Right.
And just to see that, like, healing was so cool. Like, I really liked that part. And then also, I loved just how much value was placed on loving in the present because you don't know what's happening tomorrow. And that goes for, like, all of the relationships, not just any romantic relationships in the book, but I felt like that, like, love and value and connection with people was, like, a main point, at least for me, that, like, stayed at the top of my mind of just, like, the people who were friends and stuff. Like, everyone was just so loving, and that was a big deal. So I very much enjoyed that. And then also, like, more story-based, I really loved Gaten from the start, and I loved how he was, like, weaved through. I liked his character.
I love how it wasn't, like, an emphasis on the book, or, like, it wasn't, like, a main plot point, but it was, like, a nice addition to it. Like, if you took that part away, it takes a little bit away from the story, but not a whole lot. Like, you still get the compelling story that it was. It just, like, adds this new dynamic to it even more, and like helps really show the growth and progress of Isabelle too, from like where she started with Gaten, because he was basically with her from the beginning of the story to then how they ended. Yeah, I think it helped show her growth through and like supplement that.
Yeah, and my first thought that I was going to say is like, well, if he wasn't in it, it would be like even sadder. But then I was like, wait, no, he still had like, there was still so much sad storyline with him too. So, but he was one of my faves. What about you? What were your favorite parts?
I loved the like feminist themes of this book because it was
good.
done in such a beautiful way. It wasn't very in your face. Like, if you're comparing to something like Throne of Glass, which I absolutely love still too, she's very much like, the main character there is like in your face, like I can do anything the boys can do and I can do it better, like the swagger for it all.
Yeah.
Whereas this,
or even like sorry, not to cut you off, but or even like the Barbie movie where they have a whole monologue of like
right.
what, like
exactly.
which that's a great movie in itself, but like this is a cool different way.
Absolutely. Whereas this one was much more subtle. It was like, I am woman, hear me roar, very graceful, and it's like the quiet strength of it all, which I think spoke more volume than the ones that are in your face. Not to take away from that, but it's just different, and it spoke to me far greater than like some of these other ones, and hit the point home, I think, a little bit more for how much like these women went through and like their own battle in the war that people don't remember or forget about because you're so focused on the actual war itself and the men putting their lives on line at the front, but you forget about the women left at home and what they're going through with the enemy invading and everything too, and what they're doing to help with the war. So I think she did a phenomenal job. And also showing both sides of that. For the two different women, they handled the situations very differently. Like Isabelle going out and like putting herself out there, becoming part of the resistance. Like, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Versus Vianne being at home and like, I have to take care of my home. I have to take care of my child and do everything that I possibly can to make sure we stay alive and survive through this.
But then she still knows, like, well, these things aren't right, and she still does have an impact, too. Like, it just isn't a different way. Like,
absolutely. It's like, it shows the different heroes regardless, but the different paths that in the heroism that you could take. And I really loved that about this book. Yeah. Did you have a least favorite? I know it's hard to talk about with this book, but did you have a least favorite part?
Yeah, I think the least favorite part for me was obviously the dad dying, which, like, needed to happen in the story. Like, it did add a lot to it, but it was just so sad, and also realizing that Isabelle was dead and was not the present narrator was also sad, because she makes you like on purpose believe that like she's the narrator, so that was just gut-wrenching. But then kind of that just leads me, honestly, all of the deaths, it just like had such a big impact. Like all of them felt so heavy, because I think so much was so sparse for them during that time. Like you only had the people you had, and so when that was gone, it was like, oh, like no food on the table, no friend across the street, like not like I don't know, it just, that I feel like so much value was placed on the love and the people that you have, and so every time that someone was taken away, it was just like such a dagger. Like, absolutely. Oh, that must have been so hard. So
like we have nothing, but at least we have each other. But then even that starts dwindling. Yeah, absolutely.
And like knowing how, like, in a sense, a lot of this, and this is fiction, but this is a real war that they're talking about, and so just kind of, you know, being reminded of that, and like the real people that had to go through lots of these things in different ways, in a real way, not a fictional way, like that added to the sadness too.
I think my least favorite part is also my favorite part of this book, which I think speaks to the author's like abilities, because it's the character complexity. I started off, and for a good half of this book, both sisters frustrated me entirely. Because like on one hand you had Isabelle, who is just like too pushy, too forward, too arrogant.
Yes, they both were definitely on like
opposite extremes. And she was like, you know, she was thoughtless and careless and like putting people in danger without realizing what she's doing. And so that's really frustrating to like watch or like read as the reader with her. But then with Vianne, she's like the ostrich sticking her head in the sand. If I ignore the problem, it's just going to go away, when that is not the case. Like, you need to buck it up, girlfriend, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and like, you got to do something, because you have a family to take care of and you have a house to take care of. Well, your husband's not coming back right, at least anytime soon. You don't even know if he will. Like, you got to take care of yourself and do something. You can't just hide in the corner and hope everything will work out. So on both ends, it was really frustrating for me. But that's what led to it being so beautifully complex, because you got to see that growth in both of them move forward throughout the story. So from where they started with that to where they ended, it was like 100% necessary. I don't fault the author by any means for it, but it's like when you're in the moment, you're like, oh, these people.
There were definitely times where I was like, okay, come on, like, don't act that way.
Yep.
So I feel you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a complex book for me, Darby. Complex feelings.
Yeah. It was crazy. Speaking of the sisters being so different, who do you think you related to more if you were in that situation? Or were you like a mix?
I wish I could say it was Isabelle. I think anybody that reads this book wish you could say, like, I would be the one putting myself out there on the front and, like, putting myself in danger to help the cause. But if I'm honest with myself, I know I'm not. I am not that person. I would 100% be a Vianne in this situation. I'd hope I'd be a little bit more graceful in the beginning with it. But it is a time of war. Who knows? Like, to even think and put yourself in that time period with those people, knowing that it is like a real thing that these people went through, is just something that it's like a humbling thing to think about. And like, you think you'd act one way, but how would you really in these situations? But I think I would, just knowing me and myself, I'd be more concerned with like taking care of my family, taking care of my friends, my community, and keeping us as strong as possible moving forward, helping however I can in that sense, but not risking their lives to help those of the strangers, kind of thing, I guess. So that's where I land. What about you?
Yeah, kind of copy paste. Took the words out of my mouth. I would love to say Isabelle, but I think more Vianne. It's really tough to say because I am for sure a rule follower, teacher's pet. Like, I just want to do the right thing. But also, I think what's hard is I want to do the right thing because I want to help people is kind of what drives me to want to follow rules, because I feel like it then helps others. So in that sense, I don't know what I would be like, because I think it's a mix of the sisters. Like, I would think that I would follow rules from the start, but I think I would have been more empathetic to people around me. But but at the same time, like we're saying, like, I've never been in that position. I hope to never have to be in that position. Like, I don't know. So also, I am like Isabelle in a sense of sometimes I like act first, then think later. Not a great trait, but
no, it can be.
Yeah, but so I do think I could be a little impulsive, and I don't know what that would do to me in a war setting. But also, what if I'm like too scared? Then I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
It's so weird to try to put yourself in that position to think about like what you would even do, because you think you know yourself, but then also hard times do crazy things to people, and like what you're willing to risk, what you're willing to do. I think okay, now let's do each other. I think you would be more Vianne, but like, I think you're a mix. I think you would stay home. Like, I don't think you would go out and have an impact, but I think you would have stayed home and started helping children right away. Like, I still think you would have looked for ways to help, but you would have like stayed with your family and would still like follow the like general rules. But I think you would have like started quicker with like, okay, this isn't like, you would realize like, okay, hubby's like not coming back, might not come back ever, like I need to do something. That's what I picture for you. I appreciate that. Similar but different, because again, I think you'd stay home too, like Vianne, but I think you'd be more like Isabelle in the very beginning of this book, where she's like doing the small rebellions, where she's like helping pass out the papers,
chalk on a poster,
or like honestly, no, I thought about how she uses her like girlhood to get away with things, and how she's like, I'm just a silly girl, like I know nothing. I totally could see you pulling something like that off for sure. Absolutely, like in the bookshops, or like to get away with like things like that, because if anybody could, you totally could.
Well, that is really nice. I actually don't know how to flirt, but
no, but you're so good with people, and just like
I would be nice to everybody. I would definitely be nice to all the people, whether they're invading me or not. I would be like, please, I'm just a little tiny girl. I like that.
I love how we're the similar but different.
Same but different.
Okay, so another real big ethical question here is like, what are your thoughts on Captain Beck? Which, just for context for any of you, is the first Nazi that was billeted at Vianne's house.
I feel like you have more of an emotional connection to this question and to Captain Beck, whereas like I followed Isabel's story, I feel like, more strongly, and all that was going on there. And also, I could be wrong. We haven't talked about this, but this is just my assumption. Anyway, my thoughts on Captain Beck. I think that Captain Beck was as ethically perplexed as Vianne, or he, like, left me that way, because of all the gifts that and help that he provided with her, you could tell that there was more than just, like, I'm a brute soldier staying here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could tell that there was empathy. However, right before his death makes me question it.
Mm-hmm.
He was really hard to read since they're both trying to stay so surface level with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know. I don't know. It's very difficult to read him, but I do think he had empathy, and I do think that, like, he could have crossed lines with her if the chance had presented itself.
Oh, yeah.
I think there would have been regret, but I think that it would have happened.
Mm-hmm. I think the author does a phenomenal job with his character specifically for showing the humanity of the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so true, like, in war in real life, and like how there's, even though you're fighting for different causes, there's still human on the other side. There's still emotions. They still have a family. Like, they think that they're doing the right thing, even though it's not the right thing. I think that this whole character and this complexity between Captain Beck and Vianne, like, really does a good job kind of giving the reader that different perspective on that.
Yeah, so often they mention, like, they're just boys. Like, you know, you don't think about, like, they're not the ones creating the master plans. They don't know what they're doing.
They're not Hitler.
No,
Like,
they are not. Like, they are just fresh kids, most of them.
They just signed up to join to fight for their nation, just like any other
something that initially they probably thought was, like, a good thing, not knowing.
Serve their country, a good paying job for their families, like, gonna bring honor to their family, not realizing how heavy things were going to get from the other side, and you're just following orders at that point.
Because you can't just turn around and opt out either.
No.
Like, then you're almost a prisoner, a very different kind, but, like, an ethical prisoner.
Yeah. Well, and even in the book, he talks about, like, how his superiors are getting so frustrated with him for, like, losing the airmen or different things that are going wrong, that he could lose his life too.
Yeah.
So, like, even if they wanted to opt out and they realize that they're in the wrong, like, sometimes there is no option for that without losing your life in that as well. And when you have a family you get back to, like he did, then that's, like, something that you're having to deal with internally and ethically too. But at the same time, he kind of falls into the bystander situation where it's like he might not have been doing the wrong by his hand himself, but he was still the bystander watching and letting it happen. So, like, when they were the first time that they were deporting the Jewish women and children from Vianne's town, he was there with a whip in his hand, corralling all these people into these train cars to deport them. Now, did he use it? Was he yelling? Did he actually hurt women and children? He says that he didn't, but even just by being there and having that there, like, you're still complying with it too.
Yeah, but also, would he have been whipped if he wasn't there?
Right.
That's another...
Exactly. It's such a complex situation, and I think for as, like, short a time as he's kind of, like, part of this, it's such a huge part of this story, and, like, the war itself, at least for me personally, it's something that really stuck with me. That
I knew he would.
It makes it. You did. You know me well. Yeah, it does. It makes you question things, and just like in real war too, it makes you, like, kind of, like, remember humanity a little bit within such an inhumane, like, situation.
Which the next Nazi was not.
Exactly.
He had no humanity.
Nope, not at all. That was a real bad situation.
Yeah, actually, wait, adding that into my least favorite. It's just him, his character.
Oh, true, yeah. And that whole scene with him and Vianne.
Yeah.
It was, heart-wrenching, so hard to, like, stomach when you're reading, like, some of, like, the abuse that she's suffering. But he is very much emotionally manipulating her by, like, if you don't follow what I'm telling you to do, like, I'm gonna hurt your kids kind of thing. So
it makes you realize, like, how great Beck was, because, like, the whole pouring out the leftover coffee, like, even the smallest of human decent things that he could have done, he didn't do.
Right.
Like, the new Nazi didn't do.
Yep.
Also, this leads me to another thought of just how powerful, like, it's so crazy. Every character is so, like, powerful and impactful. And I don't know, now I'm thinking about Sophie and all that she went through and how strong she was.
Absolutely.
Like,
it's all she knew pretty much from, like, childhood and growing up. By the time, I think when we meet her, she's like, what, like 9, 10-ish, something along those. And then by the time it ends, she's like 14, 15. So like that's her entire childhood that she's not young enough to like forget about it. She's going to remember it all, and to have to see your mom go through that and understand things that you shouldn't have to understand at that age makes you feel for the children that truly went through that too.
Yeah, even though Vianne's trying to hide so much from her, it's almost like none of it's hidden. Like none of it. Because how can it be? She's there too.
Right. In the same house, same town. She's seeing everything that's going on. And it's a reminder, like, children are so much more perceptive than we give them credit for, too.
Yeah. It is interesting. I wish we could have heard a little bit more about her post the war, because she seemed very bitter at the end. So I wonder, like, as an adult, how
that is
she
the,
was.
like, if there was one thing that I wanted to change, I was going to talk about this later, but we can talk about it now. One thing I wanted to change about the book would be that I wish that we could have heard a little bit more about Sophie after the war. And like, because she was such a pivotal part in this whole thing, like she was, or not pivotal, but like she was woven into the story, and she was such a driving factor for Vianne throughout this whole thing. And then I feel like at the end, when we're doing the flashback into like the present day or what's present in the book, that to find out she had cancer and then died so young, it's like, but that's such a tragedy in and of itself. Like, was there any happiness for her? Did she have a husband? Did she have children? Like,
yeah, it's very glossed over.
Yeah, I wanted to know, just like, okay, I understand that there's not always happy endings for people, but just to know a little bit more about her post-war life, I would have liked to see.
Yeah, I think a lot of the post-war in general, I wanted like a little bit more from.
Context.
If we're jumping into this, something that I wish like happened or addition, I would love more background on the dad and just like what made him the way he was. Like, I get the First or the Great War changed him, but like what else? Like, how was he before? Like, what was the stark difference? Like,
we get like little bits and pieces of it, but not enough to truly understand.
Not enough for me.
Absolutely, I agree. Like enough to like why Vianne then wanted to name like her son after him too. Like, obviously to have like such greater impact on him. Yeah,
that leads me to another thing. Why, like, I would love to have gotten more background on Vianne in the present day, why she hadn't shared with her son. That I kind of get, like, you don't, like, how awful, but at the same time, it's like, well, I want to know.
That was shocking in and of itself, too, to put those puzzle pieces together from the time that the Nazi was there.
I thought I was done crying, and then I just started back up again.
Exactly, you realize, and then it's when at the very end of this book, when the puzzle pieces start coming together for so many things, you're like, oh my gosh, wait a second.
Yeah. Also, a fun addition when I was predicting, I don't really think ahead, but one thing I initially thought when we learned that Gaten was working on bombs and that kind of stuff, I thought that was going to play a bigger role. And so I originally thought that Gaten was going to bomb the camp that Isabelle was at, and that's how she would escape. Or, like, something like that. Like, his bombing was going to be somewhere that, like, another main character was. Like, that was going to have more of an impact.
That would have been good. This, ironically, is the only time that I wasn't, like, predicting.
Wow.
It was the only... And I think it's because, if truly, I underestimate historical fiction. Because I feel like when I'm reading historical fiction, it's much more like, this is present, this is the story. Like, I'm not predicting anything because it's based on something that happened in the past. I'm already living in the present of it, or like know of whatever present happened. Yeah. So even though within the story you're kind of predicting a little bit, for me it's not as much as like this greater unknown, I guess. So I'm more present within what's happening. So that's kind of funny.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
No, but that's why I think like at the end, like you don't think about historical fictions having the plot twists that they do. Not that they don't, obviously, but when you pick up a fantasy or like a mystery, like you know that there's something coming to like surprise you or shock you, versus with a historical fiction it's not as like expected. So when it does happen, it's even more like a head turn, like, oh my gosh, wait a second.
It's crazy. And it's also, it's like you could argue like it's not necessarily even a plot twist, it's how the story's told. Which is crazy. Like,
absolutely.
You know, so that's cool too.
Testament to Kristin Hannah.
Can you make any story like have a plot twist just in the way that you say it?
Right.
Maybe. Like, I don't know, that was cool.
It was done beautifully, told beautifully. Kristin Hannah, phenomenal job.
I have a question. What were your thoughts on sending Ari away to live with his Jewish family in America? Do you think that's what Rachel would have actually wanted?
So again, so many complex questions, and whether I have a true answer or not, I really don't.
I feel like you're going to be thinking about this book 10 years time.
This will be my Roman Empire.
Exactly. Every time I see you, you're going to be like, I thought of another ethical thing.
It's so true, because they're all...
I'm going to text at midnight.
It's such a grayscale, which I love. I think that's one of my biggest things. If you know me, I say it all the time. We don't live in a black and white scale. We live in a grayscale. Everything is... There's no, black and white, yes or no, right or wrong. It's all fluctuates depending on the situation. No matter
how hard we try to be, everyone loves to try and even ourselves, Enneagram too. We love to categorize ourselves, but it's different. It's great.
Absolutely. So, and that's what I find so compelling about this book, because it's such a grayscale within this. So for this, obviously I'm not Jewish. I can't speak on it as an expert by any means, or especially at that time and what all they went through. So this is sheerly outside perspective, my opinion from reading this book as a fiction novel.
Yeah.
I think I can understand the want to send him to his American family, because from the Jewish community, he lost so much. It's almost like edge of extinction. You want to preserve.
And they say a whole generation.
Exactly. You want to preserve as many people as you can to build your generations back up and preserve your culture from dying out. And so I totally understand the Vianne can't give him that Jewish life that he would have with his Jewish family. And so I don't fault them for that by any means. But on the other hand, I do think that Rachel loved Vianne so much that she gave him Ari to protect. And that I feel that was almost that's where she wants him to be. And so that's where I think she would have wanted him to be. And even Vianne said, yes, she can't raise him Jewish because she's not Jewish, but she can do her best to remind him that this is still his identity and that he's not Catholic French boy.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. But what's to say he would follow that if none of his family, which he believed they were at that time, he didn't even know he...
It's true. I think but at that point you're leaving the choice up to him in a way, and what he wants to follow, but at least you're not denying him that cultural, that right kind of. But again, he is also super young in the book, so
yeah.
Can a 4-year-old really make that decision? Absolutely not. But just as you grow up, it's kind of when you adopt a little kid from a different culture, you want them to learn and understand and know about their culture, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they're living with you in a different culture. But if they're young, it's kind of hard to make them understand that till they're a little bit older. You just can do the best that you can.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of that situation. So I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that if he was in an orphanage like some of these other children, it makes perfect sense. Send him to a family that's going to love him, to teach him, to learn. But he kind of already had that. He had a family structure that, because he's so young, he thinks that that's his family. To then, he already lost so much from his original family, to rip him from his new family again. The emotional trauma that can cause, and psychological trauma, I feel I just wish that he could have stayed, or at least stayed in contact.
Yeah, that was my big thing when I was thinking about this question, is that, well, one, similarly, this isn't really something that I don't know if I feel qualified to even answer, having never been in any situation like this. But from a fictional perspective, if I were to give an opinion, I think it was right for him to be with his blood family. But I do simply think that they should have let Vianne and Ari keep in contact, whether it's writing letters, or at least even just knowing where they are. Even if it's hey, please don't write him for 5 years, even if it was something crazy like that, but just to let them know that they're okay, because that was a loss for Vianne too, her one last tie to her best friend. So I think contact would have helped in that situation. I think Rachel herself would have been conflicted on it, and I think it would have helped the reader more if we had ever heard Rachel talk about that family.
Right.
So I think that would have added so much more and made this a different answer, maybe.
Or her faith. We heard so much about their friendship, but you never knew that Rachel was Jewish until the stars, and then the list, when she has to make the list of all of the Jewish teachers. Like, that's the first time we ever hear about it. And even then, the only time you hear about it is if Vianne mentions that, oh yes, Rachel's Jewish, but you never hear Rachel truly like talk about it either.
Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like if she was more like, not to say that she was devote, because now we're talking about like the theories of fictional people and like what goes on in their brains, which I mean, they're fictional at this point. But I feel like from at least my perspective and Maria's perspective, if you heard about them more, it might have like swayed me a little bit differently, like because she's like so strong in her faith and she really wants her kids to grow up in this faith, but you didn't have that, so it leans me more towards like Vianne's side. But I do understand it's complex. It's complex.
Yeah. I feel like there needs to be a different book for like her story and her side, because obviously this one was about two France like Catholic girls, you know, so it was very interesting. Yeah. What about their father? Do you think he redeemed himself from his past with a sacrifice to save Isabelle?
I don't know if he redeemed himself versus truly like gain forgiveness. Like, I don't think that he like had enough time to redeem himself for the failed childhood that he gave them, and being like basically an absent father. They basically, after their mother died, they grew up orphans in a way, because the father just like was not present whatsoever. And then even when Isabelle tried so desperately to get him to love her or even just pay attention to her, that he wouldn't. I don't know if like this one single act can like redeem you for everything, but it's not to say that it wasn't worth their forgiveness and the like thank him for his sacrifice and like I forgive you from this point, like from the letter that he wrote them and everything too, apologizing. I think it's, you can't erase the hurt by it, and that's a better way, I think. You can't erase the hurt by it, but you can heal now by forgiving.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond like the sacrifice of his life. I do think that in the end, redeemed is such like an interesting word. I do think that, like you're saying, they were healed. Like Isabelle felt love for him and felt loved by him. And same with Vianne, but in a different way. I think that the letter does more justice than the death itself, along with seeing Isabelle as an adult, like him being like finally seeing Isabelle as an adult and working with her during the war.
Right.
Like, you can tell that was something that they both needed so desperately and didn't know that they needed. Well, maybe Isabelle knew that she needed him, but you could just tell that there was a bond growing between that. And I think that for sure helped mended things as well.
Right. Yeah, so sad this year ripped away.
Oh my gosh.
Which gets into this next question, which is the most emotional or like moving part of this book for you? Obviously, the whole thing is just emotional, but
yeah, all of it. But one thing I kept thinking about how this was truly reality for so many people. Because again, it's historical fiction, but it's based on a real war and real people. And so, I mean, selfishly, I was thinking about myself and how I'm so lucky and blessed that I'm sitting here on a comfy couch with more shoes than I can count, you know, and that I'm not living in war right now. So I think an emotional part for me was just like putting it into perspective of just like, gosh, this was so real. And like, I can't even, like, pretend to imagine what any of it feels like.
Right. Well, we get so comfortable. Like, Vianne was the perfect example. Like, we get so comfortable in our lives and everything going great that it can truly change in an instant. Yeah. And we take that for granted.
Yeah, so that was a really big part for me. And then going back to the dad sacrifice was, like, so powerful. I think because I'm really close with my dad, and so trying to put myself in her shoes made it so much worse and hit so hard. Oh, my gosh. I was, like, shaking on the couch. Justin, my husband, was playing video games and, like, yelling, and, like, Bogey, my dog, is sitting on the couch with me, and I'm, like, convulsing. And he walks out, and he's like, are you actually crying? And like laughs, and I'm like, it's not funny. Like, it was, oh my gosh. I was like, get out of here. But also give me a hug.
Oh yeah, no. I think I agree. For me, like it is. The whole book is very emotional, and it's like very heart-wrenching, and just kind of like the boy in the striped pajamas type of thing, where you're like, oh
I've
my
never
gosh.
seen that movie.
Oh, don't.
I know. I think that's why I haven't watched it. I know that I'm gonna be sad.
Shatters. It's such a horrific thing that these people went through, and to remind yourself that it is a real thing that happened is like even worse, especially when they're describing like Isabelle going through the concentration camps and everything. Like it's just so hard to picture, and to know that it was real is so heart-wrenching. So like that's definitely like one aspect that I think is so real throughout this whole book. But for me, the one thing that got me was the very end, because like I definitely like I don't cry a whole lot. I'm not a big crier. I definitely, reading this book, got a little teary-eyed, but no tears fell on my cheeks. Like it was emotional for me, but it didn't hit me the way
mine were streaming. Mine were racing down my face.
I don't it's not that it didn't hit me, but it was just like I'm not a huge crier until we were at that podium, and all of a sudden we realized that this is
my sister
Vianne.
Isabelle.
Yes,
I think that's what she said.
It was the shock moment for me. Like I still hadn't hit me yet, because this entire time I was living in the comfort of thinking that Isabelle survived. So like even going through the horrific like concentration camps, or coming out of that and being so sick, she's coughing up blood. I'm like, it's okay, she's gonna survive because she's the one telling this story. Yeah. And then immediately when it was Vianne, my heart dropped. I was like, wait, it was literally a moment of sheer shock. And then the next few sentences when she's like, and Isabelle died in Gaetan's arms, in that moment when everything was pure bliss.
I'm getting chills and goosebumps right now.
I cannot even describe to you that moment in me, Darby. It literally felt like a bullet train hit me in the gut. I lost my breath. It was a true shock. And I immediately like started saying thing. I convulsed. Like I sobbed, like just sobbed so hard, and I couldn't stop. And through the end of the book, I was just sobbing. I had to take laps around the house. Like I'm thinking about this for 10 minutes straight. Like afterwards, like just sobbing, like trying to calm myself down, trying to process these emotions. Only other book that I've sobbed like this for was Kingdom of Ash, and I still think that this one I sobbed more.
Oh yeah, at this point in the book, or at the end, because I was the same way. I started convulsing again at this part. But now Justin was sitting on the couch watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and like we're not talking to each other. I'm just like holding the book, shaking, holding the book, and like sobbing, and we're not even like, he doesn't even like say anything. Like he just knows that I'm in another world right now. But I felt the same way. Like, but it was just a really funny scene. Like I wish someone could have recorded it, because it was like Justin, Bogey, me.
I got lucky because my fiance Josh was at a golf tournament that time, so like I had the house to myself. And but I definitely, I don't know if you do this with Justin, but as soon as he came home, I was like, oh my gosh, you'll never know what I just read. Like I just went through this most traumatic thing, and telling him all about it. Like just coming back, walked through the door, like he doesn't know anything about anything. Like, I'm sorry that happened to you, Kristin.
The only, I don't really do that with Justin. One, because like fantasy stuff, he hates mythical things. Like
so does Josh.
Yeah, so even if I try to like a vampire, he's like, no. Like, so typically I don't tell him stuff. So I didn't really tell him this either, because also I knew he wouldn't get it. Like it's not gonna hit him the way it's hitting me right now. So I didn't really say anything. Besides the first time he asked me if I was okay, and I was like, no, her dad died. That was the only thing I told him. And then I just said like, it was so powerful.
Yeah, I'm just such a like. I've come to realize, like, in order for me to process things, I'm very much a talker. Like, I have to talk out loud to process everything. Like, I can think through it in my head,
which is fine because you're an introvert.
I know, right? And I can do it in my head and process with myself to a point, but it takes me much
Talking
longer.
to the other various Mikaylas in your head.
No, it's true. I have a problem. My mom says I'll never be lonely because I always have myself. Shout out, Mom.
I have a wall to talk to, so I'm good.
I can process it myself. It'll just take me twice as long, versus if I can, like, you might not have zero idea what I'm talking about, but if I'm just vocalizing it to you, it processes like twice as fast for me in a way. So like for Josh, poor guy, even with fantasy things or anything, like I'll finish a book and I immediately will just like dump everything on him and all my thoughts, and he's like, scrolling on TikTok.
Oh, so no,
even listening.
See, I can't do that. I need active listening. So like I need them to be like, oh, no way. And then what did the Stegosaurus do? Like, then what happened? Like, I don't know. I need more, like, attention.
It depends. Like, if we're talking about, like, true topics, then yes. But, like, in this case, like, or if just
in
coming
book
off...
worlds, we know that's not their forte.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm good. I just need to dump it.
Just dump it, yeah.
Yep. I need to get off my chest. But, yeah, that was the most... Wrapping it back around after our tangent, that was the most emotional part for me. That ending just... I truly have never experienced a moment like that in my life from something fictional that it's just... Oh, my gosh.
You know what I want to know? Listeners... If you read this book and didn't cry, please let us know.
Yes.
I'm so curious. Because if so, there's something wrong with you. If so, you need help.
Not really. It's okay. Everybody's different.
Not really. I cry when a butterfly dies. Like, you know.
And I don't. And it's okay. It's okay to not be a crier. I am like that. Just, you know, for me, there's certain things that it'll just get you.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I am just curious, though, how impacted other people were. Because I feel like this really, really hit both of us.
Well, and I think, like, the Goodreads score, it's like a 4.67 or something, which is, like, huge on Goodreads. Like, books do not get that higher rating on Goodreads. So I think that just, like, is even more a testament to, like, how phenomenal this book is.
I'm curious. I want to go read some of the low scores and see why they wrote it low.
But I also kind of don't, because it'll ruin it for me a little bit too, I feel like.
No, see, this is a 5-star for me, and so nothing can touch it. No one's opinions. I'm in a bubble now. See, it's perfect for me. What in Inside Out, it's like the core memory. Like,
for me, it's not that it ruins it for me, but it's like adding more information to it. Yeah. Because
you already have the ethical decision.
I'm such an overprocessor, like overthinker. So it's like, it's not changing my perspective. It's adding more information to it. So I might point out things that I like go back and I realize I'm like, oh yeah. So it does kind of change your perspective a little bit if I agree with or I understand what they're talking about.
I imagine like the SpongeBob scene when they're all running around chaotic, but not like they're throwing everything out, but they're just like, okay, where do I file this one now? Like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, maybe I will. I don't know. Because I am kind of curious, like what people would find wrong with this book. Well, would you read another book by this author?
Absolutely, 100%.
Me too. If it's a 5-star, absolutely. She has
I'm
quite a few of them. I'm
going to buy a box of tissues first. But
I'm very curious to see
like what the vibe is of the other books.
Because I think this one is like one of her most popular. So, but I know that at least my grandma has like a bunch of them. Her books on her Kindle. Like she loves reading her and like the different time periods and things. So I'd be very curious to see.
I am curious to some of my favorite authors, I will say no names, are sometimes one-hit wonders. Like, I love a series, but then everything else, I'm like, I just cannot get into that. So I wonder if, for me personally, if it would feel that way.
Right. No, I agree. But if a book is 5 stars, then it's an immediate, like, I'm going to try another book. So, now whether that other book is 5 stars is to be determined.
Yeah. We keep saying 5 stars. Should we we actively say, what did we rate this on our star rating? What are your final thoughts on the book?
Surprise! It's 5 stars!
Oh my gosh, me too.
Didn't see it coming.
If I could have given it 6 stars, I would have on Goodreads, but too. I can't.
Oh, it was so phenomenal. No notes from me. Well, actually, I can't say that because I did say Sophie. But in general, really, like, for me, like, this was a no-notes book. Like, it was emotionally moving. It was complex. It made me think. The author did a fantastic job portraying, like, how women were the backbone throughout this war and, like, really getting you to think and put yourself in their shoes at that time period. It was just so well done. And the storytelling, like you said, the way that the flash forwards made you believe one thing to then make that story hit so hard at the end was just beautifully done.
Yeah, this was a 5 stars through and through for me. Not a second of this book let me down. Like, not a second. It was all phenomenal. I'm not one for, like, news and politics, but it also just made me so aware that, like, there are various wars happening right now. And, like, how are those people feeling? Like, how lucky are we? How blessed are we? And so it's also really moved me to, like, want to explore more, like, and it's probably going to be even I'm going to feel even sadder and worse diving into it, but I would love to get more involved and help make a difference in what way I can in current, like, political wars and stuff going on right now, just to help in healing of any way. Like, I just I want to show compassion to them. So it like has really moved me in a big way. Like I as little historical fiction has made me want to get involved.
I think it's so easy for us to like write off historical fiction because it's like fiction, quote unquote. And so, or it's like such a further time period that it does almost add into the fiction of it, where it's like, even though it truly did happen, it's almost so far out of grasp for us in reality, which is kind of sad to say too, because you learn from history, but that's a topic for another time.
3 hours of TikTok, it's like, what is real?
Exactly. Well, and it's like, yeah, because we're stuck with like technology is so much more advanced now that it almost puts you feeling like it's such a huge difference in time because they didn't have that, especially like certain parts of the world, like in France, like not even France, in the countryside of France, like, you know, Facebook, TikTok, like not even, like it's just so far removed from that. But really it wasn't that long ago for you to think about. And no, absolutely, with everything that's been going on, it makes you really stop to think a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's sad, but wow, this is just, it was a really good book.
Highly recommend. If you're just listening to us ramble and have absolutely no idea what's going on, go read this book. First 5 stars of the podcast. Yeah. Go read it.
And if you send us a picture, maybe I will send you $1 to go towards a tissue fund of buying yourself tissues.
At Lazy Girl Library on Instagram. You can find us at lazygirllibrary.com. Reach out to us.
Let me reword that. First 10 people that said.
Well, that was April's book. Yes. Now on to May's book
club. Totally different vibe.
So
Bring
different.
on the dragons. It's Fourth Wing time.
I'm so excited to get back to a dragon book.
Yeah.
I love dragons. I'm so excited.
You little dragon slayer, you.
I love them. I love them. I love them. I love them.
I'm honestly very surprised that we have not read this book before.
Right.
That it's kind of taken us this long to read it.
If I'm being honest, it kind of intimidates me a little bit. Not because the book itself is intimidating, but because of all of the hype behind it.
I agree.
And so I'm really, and even reading the back of the book, I'm kind of like, I don't know, because I could see this. I want to believe that it's going to be a great book and live up to the hype, but I fear that it might be like a trying too hard to fit into what's popular kind of book, which is why everybody loves it, because that's what people are desperate for. But obviously we're different. We're different so girlies.
Different. My found family.
But I want to give it a fair shot, and I'm going to give it a fair shot, and it is one that's been on our list for a really long time, and I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, I really hope it's good. I feel similarly. I felt almost like, I just felt not like bandwagony, but almost like everybody who was reading it, I think I felt too cool for it. I was like, I don't need to read Fourth. But like, I've seen mixed reviews. Like, I don't need to.
But if you think about it from like a Sarah J. Maas perspective too, like anybody new coming in to try to read those could feel the exact same way, whereas like we know on the opposite end, like, no, it's worth it, you have to read.
I don't know why that happens in our minds of like it's not a competition of whether a book's good or not, but for some reason,
as soon as it becomes popular, it like adds almost a negative connotation to it.
And I don't know why. I'm excited for it, and I hope it's really good. So
I'm just holding on to the dragons because I love dragons.
Yes, and if you've somehow never heard of Fourth Wing before, I'm going to read the book description. So sorry if I mispronounce words. Fantasy words are hard sometimes.
They are.
Anyway, so the book description for Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail was supposed to enter the scribe quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. Now the commanding general, also known as her toughest talent's mother, has ordered Violet to join the hundreds of candidates striving to become the elite of Navarre, dragon riders. But when you're smaller than everyone else and your body is brittle, death is only a heartbeat away. Because dragons don't bond to fragile humans, they incinerate them. With fewer dragons willing to bond than cadets, most would kill Violet to better their own chances of success. The rest would kill her just for being her mother's daughter. Like Xaden Ryerson, the most powerful and ruthless wing leader in the Riders Quadrant. She'll need every edge her wits can give her just to see the next sunrise. Yet, with every day that passes, the war outside grows more deadly, the kingdom's protective wards are failing, and the death toll continues to rise. Even worse, Violet begins to suspect leadership is hiding a terrible secret. Friends, enemies, lovers, everyone at Basgiath War College has an agenda, because once you enter, there are only 2 ways out: graduate or die. Dun dun dun!
What will happen next?
Yeah. It does sound intriguing.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
I'll be curious. One way or another, I'm going to have thoughts. As if you've been listening this far, you know I have thoughts. So, I'll be curious to see what those thoughts entail.
Yeah, it'll be good. But so that is the future, our next month's book club. What about right now? What are our borrows and returns? Mikayla, do you want to get us started?
I'm going to be short and sweet here this time because I'm going to be real honest. Life has been a little busy and we have not had time to prioritize reading. So as far as my returns, I have none other than the Nightingale, which we just reviewed. So I'm not going to review that again. 10 out of 10. That's all I'm going to say. For my borrows, I'm getting Back to Circe by Madeline Miller. I'm going to do my absolute best to try to finish this book before I start Fourth Wing. But if timing doesn't allow, then it might get put on the back burner until after Fourth Wing too. But we're going to try our absolute best.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this book. I want to give it the time and dedication to and attention to read it and appreciate it for what it is and not just skim through it. But it is a shorter book, so I feel like I can do it as long as I prioritize it over scrolling TikTok and things like that.
Yeah.
Then I should be able to. And then I'm still reading Wild by Cheryl Strayed on audiobook. I listen to it on my commutes. So sometimes, life is life and things, just trying to get through it slowly. It is a longer book, but I am still reading it. I'm still enjoying it. After our hike that we just did not too long ago in Sky Valley, Georgia, I definitely have a new appreciation for this book because for our little nature hike, just fun, hot girl kind of hike, trying to picture and imagine Cheryl hiking this super hard intense trail for months on end. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even make it through 2 hours, Darby. I can't. New appreciation, really enjoying the book.
That's good.
What about you?
I think I want to read that book too.
I highly recommend.
Yeah, I am in a very similar boat. I am planning a gala right now and it's next weekend, and so I have been working at work. And when I get home,
life just happens. Yeah.
So not too much time for reading this past month, but I have been living in Emily Henry land. I love that girl. I finished Book Lovers, and oh my gosh, it was so good. It made me want to flirt so badly.
Justin.
Yeah. Let's pretend. It's so hard when you're
yeah.
I don't know. But man, it just had such good banter, and the main character was it was so good. I loved it. So that was a really great book. And then right now I'm reading People We Meet on Vacation. Also a great book. Both of these I'm doing audio. So without audiobooks this past month, it would have just been the Nightingale for me. But
that's all it was for me. So it's all good.
Yeah. But I've said this before, but I love the voice actor who narrates the Emily Henry books. She is so good. People We Meet on Vacation is going really well too. I am very much enjoying it. I think Book Lovers is going to remain my favorite. But once I finish this one, then I'll be all caught up on Emily Henry's books. And she just had a new one come out. I think it's called Funny Story. So that one will probably be in my borrows soon enough.
Between you and our other friend Samantha, who both love these, I really need to give her a shot. As soon as I have more time to commit to reading, I'm going to. It's on my list. I'm going to try it.
She's good.
Maybe for another book talk.
Yeah. I want to finish the Firebird trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just have one book left. So I might try and read that before Fourth Wing.
They're pretty short and easy to get through.
Yeah. So that is potentially a borrow for me right now. Yeah.
We'll see.
That's what we got going on.
We're still thinking at the library.
Yeah. I'm a little too lazy right now to pick up a book.
Well, no, you're not lazy. You have a lot better priorities.
This
Darby, don't sell yourself short. You are working hard, girlfriend.
Thanks. I am.
And you deserve a lazy day.
But it's okay. I'll get to dress up at the gala, and I'll still be stressed, but in a dress.
Yay!
Anywho, that was it for this month's book club episode. Make sure to let us know your thoughts on Instagram at Lazy Girl Library. Let us know if you have any book suggestions in mind for any future book talks that we talk about. And thanks so much for joining. Please leave us a review anywhere.
Your support. We have had a lot of our friend listeners reach out and tell us how much they love the podcast, and we love hearing that. It makes us feel so good. So
I'm for sure not getting a big head at all.
No, send us all the praise. It's so nice to hear. If you have any thoughts at all, share them with us. We'd love to talk about it.
Do you know the Vine? Sorry, sidetracked real quick before we end. The Vine of the little girl that's like, I want to be famous. That's me right now. Every time anyone says anything nice to me, I'm like, I want to be famous.
I love it. So.
And with that, we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Well, dear listeners, we find ourselves at the end of another episode. And remember, the Lazy Girl Library is not just a podcast, it's a community. We absolutely love hearing from fellow book lovers, so don't forget to share your thoughts and your favorite reads with us on our social media. You can find us on Instagram at Lazy Girl Library. Make sure to check out our website, lazygirllibrary.com, your one-stop shop for all things Lazy Girl. Before we go, we want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful listeners. Whether you're listening from your cozy bed, on your way to work, or anywhere in between, thank you for making us a part of your day and for being a part of our Lazy Girl family. So keep those pages turning, keep those imaginations flourishing, and remember, the best stories are yet to be discovered. Until next time, stay lazy and happy reading.